Hello there, and welcome to the CP7 podcast. My name's Parm,
And I'm Andy.
and together we are Chrono Passion 7. So, first, what we're going to do is a quick wristwatch check. Andy, what's on the wrist then?
I'm sorry, today I'm wearing something we've already shown on a previous show, but I am wearing the Vacheron gold bar watch. So the 15-gram gold bar by Vacheron. I'm really enjoying this piece. It's good fun. It's honeymoon period, right? I've not had it long, so I'll be honest, it's a watch what I'm wearing most of the time lately. How about yourself?
So, I am also wearing a watch I've talked about before, the Cartier Tank Mouste, the large version, which I bought from the Cartier boutique in Paris. I wore it this weekend to an event put on by the London Restaurant Festival, and it has not left my wrist since. So for the last few days, I've had it on, and it's very difficult to take off once you put on something so beautiful. So to see pictures of these watches and all of the watches we're going to talk about in the show, check out our Instagram at chrono_passion_7, the number 7. You'll see everything we talk about just to get that visual experience.
Awesome. So please make sure to check that out. So before we get into the topic of today's show, we want to do some shout outs. And my shout out for today is for Dan Horology, who's been a great supporter of the show. He's given some great feedback. He's following what we're doing. He's listening to the episodes. And just thank you so much for your continued support. We're really happy to hear you're enjoying the shows. And if you've got any suggestions for some interesting topics, let us know. We'd be happy to cover them.
First of all, I'd like to say thank you to everyone who we gave a shout out to last time and responded so kindly with some really nice messages. My shout out is to Jamie, also known as Jamie Opulence on YouTube and Instagram. He gave us a nice little shout out on his Instagram stories and plugged the show, which is what we like to hear. And so, Andy, what are we talking about today then?
Today is another fun episode, and we've decided to set a bit of a challenge for ourselves. So we have 5 categories. Within those 5 categories, we have watches we have owned, our ideal / dream watch, what we would like within that category, and then some wild cards. So we're going to be talking about our daily watches. Then we're going to move over to dress watches. Then from dress watches, we go over to diver. Then we go to the perfect travel watches. Then we round up with pilot watches. So it's going to be a fun show. There's going to be some interesting choices, as always. I don't know what Palm's chosen, so this is going to be fun to react to each other's choices. Yeah, fasten up and sit back and enjoy the show.
Yeah, mine are all Armani watches, by the way.
On that bombshell, let's get the ball rolling.
So let's move into our first category, which is daily watches. What are your choices?
So for daily, and within daily, right, it's what with the first category is, what I currently own or owned in the past. And I had to really think about this because I've had quite a few daily watches. But for me, it had to be a vintage tank, what I once owned. So it was a tank Mouste, and I loved that watch. It was quite small, smaller than the modern standard, these days. And it had the burgundy, spider dial. It had all the cracks in all the right places. I just loved that watch. It was gold plated, but it looked the part. It was patinaed nicely. There was no chips within the gold plating. And it's just a timeless icon, right? It stood the test of time. It's from 1917. And it's still as beautiful, today as it was all the way back then. Inspired by the old Renault tanks back in World War One. It's just when you think Art Deco in watches, the tank is what comes straight to mind. It's just, for me, it's a timeless classic, and I think it will be for many more years to come. It's uninvasive. It doesn't get in your way. It's extremely comfortable to wear. So I love watches, but I do find myself taking them off from time to time. The tank, it was never like that. I could wear it all day, all night. It was just extremely comfortable. So that's another reason. And it's kind of ready for any occasion. I dress kind of smart casual most of the time anyhow. So I can look casual with the tank, but also when I need to look a bit more suave, it fits that bill as well. So for me, it was really the perfect daily, what I owned in my personal collection. How about yourself, Palm? What did you pick?
So I picked a watch through practicality. A watch that I've owned, obviously. I don't own it currently, but it's a watch I wore a lot. I felt safe wearing it. And again, I enjoyed wearing it. It was the Tudor Black Bay 58 with the blue dial. It was the sweet spot of 39 millimeters. It had, I didn't go diving, but it had 200 meters water resistance for what that's worth. It had a 70k power reserve as well. So you could just put it away for a day or two and then just pick it up again and wear it, and it would still be running. It had an amazing kinesi movement in there, MT5402. It looked good. It popped in the sun with that blue, as blue watches do, but this had something special about it. Retro vibes. I didn't even mind the rivet bracelet. I kind of liked it, to be honest with you. That might be controversial, but that to me was something I could just grab and go, pick up, put on, use, and put back. That's, for me, the perfect daily watch that I have owned.
That leads me then to my ideal, right? So that would be the dream watch. And I think, like Palm, we really had to think about this. It's a tough challenge, and the more I'm doing these exercises, the more I'm learning about what I really need in my collection. This is going to please Palm, I am sure. It's Rolex, a Rolex Submariner. I'm in a dream world where we're in a safer environment. Let's just dream we're in the rest of the world is like Dubai as in terms of safety. I would love the 5513, known as pretty much the iconic James Bond watch. I've been binging on James Bond movies lately this weekend, and I was watching License to Kill, and it's just so awesome, right? It just looks really, really cool. I'm sorry, I don't want to overuse the word cool, but it is. It's just fat. And also, it has the Bart Simpson, so it's better known as the Bart Simpson as well to more, let's say, people who aren't as much into the pop culture. The Bart Simpson is reference to the Rolex crown. It reminds people of Bart Simpson's hairstyle. So really, really cool piece. That would be my dream piece. However, if I had to have an ideal obtainable piece, certainly a no date birth year also would be on my list, and that is relatively obtainable. I'm not going to give away how old I am, but let's just say it would be neo vintage. It wouldn't be so difficult to get for a decent price. So yeah, it's an iconic watch, loved by everyone, even the people who say they don't like them. Once they get it on the wrist, they secretly do. Let's be honest. So for me, that is what I choose for my ideal daily. How about yourself, Pam?
Right, for me, my ideal watch or dream watch would also be a Rolex, surprisingly. It is the Rolex Day Date, the 36 millimeter with the presidential dial. It's from the 1980s and 90s. It was the first reference to have the double quick set, so you could set the date and time the way you can now. But for me, the Day Date is a watch that I could say, oh, I want to wear a rose gold Nautilus with a perpetual calendar. And no, I wouldn't want to. I would like to wear the Day Date daily. It would be a dream for me to be able to wear that safely and just be carefree wearing it as well, because it's just, to me, the epitome of a gold watch. If you look up gold watch in the dictionary, the Rolex Day Date is pretty much what you'll see there, a big picture of that. And it's had iconic wearers in popular culture and in real life. You have Tony Soprano. I mean, you have Alec Baldwin in that iconic movie, Glengarry Glen Ross, where he comes out with that crazy line that, "Do you see this watch? This watch is worth more than your car." He's a bit of a douche in the actual film, but you get the meaning of the President watch. You get what it means owning that when you hear him saying that. Also, RJ Brewer from Fratello rocks one really well. Tristiano from the Urban Gentry. This is a watch that can suit anyone. And if a watch suits someone, it looks amazing. And I think this is a watch. If it suits you, it will look $1,000,000. And so when we talk of wildcards, Andy, what would you say was your wildcard?
I've gone really left of field for this wild card. I've gone for the Devon Tread One, and maybe not many people have heard of this piece, but it's one what caught my attention going back a few years now, and it's just crazy. It has four different belts, what's used to tell the time. Just giving a bit more background to this piece, it's actually a quartz watch, and you charge it with conductive technology, so similar to how you charge an Apple Watch. That's quite modern, yet it hasn't lost the heart of horology. Even though it's a quartz, even though it's an electronic watch, it's got so much engineering and moving components. All of these 4 belts move around crazily to tell you the current time. And it goes from a standby state. So it goes to sleep, and then you just push the button at the bottom of the watch, which is like the crown, and it just springs to life. And it's quite a noisy watch. You've got all these belts moving around to tell you the exact time. It has a 14-day power reserve, which is quite impressive. However, that's without the running seconds. And I believe most people wouldn't want the running seconds, as it does make quite a lot of noise with that belt moving around every second. However, very, very cool. I'm a bit of a conversation starter watch guy. I just like interesting watches for myself, not just to start conversations. I just find them fascinating. And the amount of engineering, what's gone into that watch, is a brilliant achievement. Love it or hate it, you can't deny it is an impressive watch. So is it a practical daily? Probably not, but it definitely put a smile on my face. So if I was to go a bit wild, that's certainly what I'd choose. But how about yourself, Parm?
Interesting looking one. For me, I would go with the Konstantin Chaykin Joker watch, the one in steel. It's amazing, actually, that it's been 6 years since it was released at Baselworld in 2017. I always imagine it being something very recent, but it's something, I think, if you're feeling a bit left of field, if you're feeling a bit wild card, feeling a bit, want to be a bit different, this is the watch you'd wear as your daily, because that clown face is just a bit freaky, but it's also very playful while being a little bit freaky. The clown face, the way it does the time as well, it's just the eyes actually replace the hand. And at 10 o'clock you have the hours, and at 2 o'clock you have the minutes, which rotate accordingly to tell you the time, which again is even more fascinating when you realize it's a modified ETA movement. Being 42 millimeters is very practical to wear every day as well. Not the most practical for me, but I'd say practical enough. And with a 38-hour power reserve, it's pretty spot on for a daily. And as we're recording on Halloween, not when we're dropping this though, they have just released the Halloween version of this watch as well, which I'll probably wear it only on Halloween, obviously. But yeah, that is my wild card.
I really like it. So I think that couldn't be a better selection given the day it is, right? The 31st. So great choice there. So that then takes us into dress watches. And now we're really entering my world of my favorite kind of watches. I have seemed to have gravitated to the dress watch side of collecting these days. And I think the obvious choice is right? From the previous episode, you probably already know my choice. It has to be the Patek 5119R at 36 millimeters. Like, come on, it's perfect, right? 36 millimeter is the correct size, in my humble opinion, for a dress watch. A dress watch for me is all about subtle elegance and class. You don't need to show off that you've got something so precious on your wrist. It just is. Just having this slim line watch, what fits perfectly under the cuff, and then that bright, sharp white enamel dial, the beautiful hobnail finishing around the bezel, then the beautifully finished 215, albeit small movement in the back there, and with the exhibition case back. But for me, the traditional kind of bridges, the 215 was based on, the older pocket watch movement. So, well, it was a pocket watch movement originally. It's just being a vintage watch guy, it's something I really appreciate. So certainly that is a watch what I don't own anymore, just for those who maybe hasn't heard the previous episode, but I did at one point in time. And that's certainly one I would rock from my previous collection.
Excellent. Very good choice. My dress watch selection for a watch I own is the one I'm wearing right now, the Cartier Tank Mousse. It's probably because it's one of the only dress watches I own or have ever owned. But going deeper into that, it's something I've nearly pulled the trigger on at least 3-4 times in the past. And I'm glad I finally did it this year, because to me, it is the icon. It is a distinctive design. It's the rectangular dress watch. It's small, it's sleek, it's got a lot of history, a lot of heritage. It's got the blued hands, the Roman numerals, the Renault tank design with the brancards, and it also has the Cartier logo in one of the Roman numerals. So it's just something very unique to me, and it is something I had to have in my collection. I'm more of a sports watch kind of guy, but off the dress watches, this was the one I had to have first, or if I don't ever add any more, this is the one I'd like to have and keep. So Andy, let's move on to your ideal. What's your ideal dress watch?
Absolutely. So, for my ideal, again, it's self discovery, but it's a watch I have loved and admired for a long time. And it's the Piaget Polo. And before you all quickly tune out of the podcast, I mean the vintage Piaget Polo. So, we're going back to 1979. And the particular reference for me is the Black Dial Day Date. I absolutely love that piece. I think it is pure class. It's coming from a time where watchmaking was all about just showing the most opulent, classy watches the watchmakers could make. It was almost like jewelry meets time telling. I can't help but reference and recognize the King Midas alongside with the Piaget, the King Midas dating back from 62 to 72. However, very similar. It was almost like the watch had been crafted from a single bar of gold, and certainly the Polo captures that magic as well, whether it was intentional or not. They come in at a rather small size at 32 millimeters in general. There is a jumbo reference out there, I think what's 34 millimeter, but good luck finding one. Some people don't like the font on the day date. I think it just adds to its character. I think it's superb. And I'll be honest, even though it is the ideal dream kind of watch selection, it is actually obtainable. And the more I think about this, it's certainly a piece I think I would like to add to my collection in the upcoming year, quite possibly. So watch this space, but I think it's a fantastic piece. If you've never seen it before, check it out on the Instagram post. How about yourself, Pam? What's your ideal dress piece?
For me, I just want to say that while Patek Philippe is the pinnacle, I believe, of watch complications and dress watches, and Patek Philippe is the pinnacle of watches, some might say. But to me, there are two brands which show a watch enthusiast and show someone who's a bit ironically left of field, or just not someone who will just do what everyone else does. And those two brands are Vacheron Constantin and Breguet, who both make amazing dress watches. But the one I've picked today is a Vacheron Constantin Gerard Mercator 2000, which has a cloisonné dial, which is the enamel dial, which is so expertly painted or expertly crafted and baked that one blemish on that could just ruin the whole thing, and the whole process would have to start again. So on this Gerard Mercator 2000, it has a world map on it, and the hands are like the hands of a compass. So they're in a triangle, a reverse V, basically, and it's got almost a sailor stroke explorer vibe to it. It's got the old world nautical navigation map dial. It's just something that you would find in archives, but it's on the dial of a watch. And the way the compass hands actually work and tell the time is as each unit of time increments like minutes and hours, it moves from the middle to the outside. And when it's 12:59 and 59 seconds, it forms this perfect V as a pair of compasses would. And it's just something to behold. It's something that's just pure art, pure horological fantasy. I'd say it's beautiful, and to me that is the ideal dress watch. And one day, I mean, I'm not saying I'm going to get this, but it's very, the price is quite high, but it's something that I would love to have in my collection, because I genuinely think this is something. This isn't just for the exercise. This is actually something I genuinely have admired in the past and continue to admire. And Andy, for your wild card, what would you say for as a dress watch? Because I know you're a big dress watch guy. This would be quite tough for you.
So I've gone a little crazy, but not too crazy. I'm keeping it refined, but I think you would agree this is a little wild. So I've gone for the Amiga La Magique, or better known as the Scarface watch. So it was produced in 1982, and there was only ever 261 pieces of this watch ever made. So it is relatively, rare. However, when they do come up, when they are available, they're priced at a relatively affordable price point. So look out for these pieces. You can normally pick them up around 4.5K, for example, which I think is brilliant. You're getting a really, really special watch. So it is quartz, but the way the quartz movement is made, it's around the square. So it's a rectangular watch, as you'll see on the IG, and the whole quartz movement. You've got to think back then, quartz couldn't be as thin as what they are today. So there were still relatively big movements, and it was built all around the rectangular case. However, the case still came in at a 2.6 millimeter thickness, which is quite impressive. And the star of the show is the center, the dial, it is actually two sapphire discs with a print for your minute hand and a print for your hour hand, and they look like they're just magically moving all by themselves with no movement behind them. So for the year, for again 1982, this is pretty cool. This is really classy elegance, yet very fun and wild. I really, really like it. I love mystery dials in general, and I think this is just Amiga showing a masterclass in execution of how to do this the right way. Just so classy, and yeah, it's certainly a piece I'd love to wear. Would I suddenly turn into Scarface? I hope not, but it's yeah, it's freaking cool. I'm sorry, I'm using cool again. I don't care. I'm just gonna put it in there. But anyway, Palm, what's your wild card?
Yep, that sure looks like you work in sanitation. But my wild card watch is again Cartier. As you can tell, I'm a big fan of Cartier and their dress watches, as being the master of shapes as well. They're a brand that I really do like. So my one is the Cartier Crash, which is probably as left of field as you can get. Some say it was inspired by Salvador Dali and the melting clocks. Again, there's a mystery around this watch. Why is that shaped that way? Salvador Dali, that's been rejected by some people. They say there was a lady who was wearing a Cartier Banois Allongé, who it was in an accident, and in the fire of that car accident, the Banois melted, and she took it to the boutique to get it fixed, and they created this crash from that. Some say it was from a tank. So there's a big mystique around how this watch actually came to be and what inspired the shape of it. But with Cartier being the master of shapes, they may have even just decided to go all out with it. But that is a watch I find, if I could own it, it's very much out of my reach. But if I could own that, I genuinely would love to own that. That could have almost been an ideal. But because of the story and the craziness around the story, that is my left of field, my wild card. So Andy, what next? What have we got next?
So that leads us to dive watches. So quite a fun one and getting a bit sporty as well. So for me, out of all the pieces I've owned, and I do have to give a nod to the Crepper's Hydrographer. I did think of this one. I used to wear that all the time. It was almost my signature watch. But look, we'll maybe talk about that in another show. But out of all the ones I have owned, out of all the divers, it has to be my Tudor Submariner. It's the Snowflake. It's from the 70s. It's just really, really nice. And you feel like you're cheating the system because you're getting the Rolex bracelet, you're getting the Rolex case, the Rolex crown. The only thing what isn't Rolex really is obviously the hands, the Snowflake hands, the dial. And then, of course, you've got the ETA, which is the 2824, which is a great movement all the same, but it just felt great. It had that hollow end links, so you get that jingly jangly, what everybody talks about, with vintage Rolex, and it was just so nice. And the dial was incredible on that piece. It had the most crazy patina. You will see it pictured, and it just looked like it was a whole different world going on in there due to that patina, and I loved it. And if I could have a watch back, that certainly would be the diver what I would want to get back in my collection as the ideal diver, which I personally owned. How about yourself, Pam?
Now we're into sports watch. Now we're in my territory. Being a fan of sports and a participant in sports, I'm looking forward to this one. So divers, my favorite diver that I have owned, unfortunately don't have it at the moment, is my Submariner no date 114060. There's something about a Submariner that you hear everywhere. Oh, it's just like a Submariner. The finishing's like a Submariner. The bezel clicks round like a Submariner. It is the yardstick that most dive watches are measured against. There are other ones with heritage, I know, with a bigger heritage, but I'd say it gives any of those a real run for their money. I had the 114060, the no date. It had a 48-hour power reserve, and to me, it was a special watch because I bought it in lockdown. It was a treat to myself, and certain watches, they have that je ne sais quoi about them. This is something you can't explain. It was like wearing it, going outside, staying inside, reading Submariner on the dial. Not so much the Rolex part, but it was just the Submariner. It was just wearing a Submariner. There was something I loved about wearing a Submariner that made this whole watch craziness worthwhile because it made me feel, right, I am part of it. I feel I feel engaged. I feel bought in. I am in the game when I wear one of these, when I wear a watch like this. So then that leads us into our ideal diver. Andy, what have you got for us?
So, to shake things up, it is not a Rolex Submariner, but arguably just as iconic. So, I've gone for the Blank Pen 50 Fathoms. And the reference which I like, or the rendition which I like, is from the 1960s. It's the no radiation dial. I just think that's so cool and kind of silly because it has a hazardous sign on the dial for a watch that has no hazardous substance inside it whatsoever. So, when we're dating back, when it was originally released in 1954, there was radium inside, right? Which was hazardous, and hence why once they realized that, and then in the 60s got rid of that, they wanted to make a point so people weren't scared to buy the watch, from fear of having some kind of radiation poisoning. So I just find it a cool, novel touch to the watch. If I was to go for original 50 fathoms, that would be my choice. However, they are, again, it is a watch what I would truly love to own, but they're just a little bit out there, right? They're hard to obtain. However, if I had to go to the Swatch side, I won't say dark side, I would get the Swatch Arctique just to scratch that itch a little bit, as it has a nice subtle nod to that reference. So that is certainly what I would pick for my ideal. But Parm, I'm interested to see what you've chosen.
Yeah, it's always interested me with the no radiations plural. That was always quite amusing on that one. So for me, I have chosen a watch for a brand that I never thought I would really want to be into, and that's Audemars Piguet. It's the Audemars Piguet Offshore Khaki Diver with the grenade dial. Again, this is a watch I never thought I would like, but I do because of this model. I think offshores they've really grown on me. Plus, this is 42 millimeter, which is just about as big as it can go for me. I wouldn't want a watch any larger than that. The 42 millimeter is, the best for me in terms of size. It's the largest for me in terms of size. It has a 300 meter water resistance, 60-hour power reserve. But there's something about that green. It's got such great military vibes. Green represents nature. And like I said, there's something very natural about that color. They've got that color spot on. And also, this reminds me of a trip to Harrods I made. So most of the time, these watches, these high-end watches that we see, we're only going to see those in photographs. We're not going to see too many of those in person. I had seen one in person previously, but I didn't get too much of a chance I didn't get a chance to try it on, didn't get too much of a chance to look at it. But I was with a friend from the United States in Harrods who wanted to pop into the AP shop. He was a fellow watch nut, and so he started speaking to the salesman, a very good salesman, young, very informed, very friendly, and talking about the Code 1159s, Royal Oaks, obviously the Royal Oaks, and that conversation continued. I really didn't feel like I had much to say, but the sales assistant looked at me and he said, "What about you, sir?" And I said, "Well, AP is not really a brand that I would particularly go for." He said, "But surely there must be something you like." And corner of my eye, I noticed this khaki diver on the other side, on the left-hand side. We're standing in the doorway, close to the doorway, sorry. And I noticed it on the far left of the boutique, the khaki diver. And I said to him, "To be honest with you, of all the watches, that's the one I like." And it was all the way on the other side. And he looked over and then he looked at me and he thought, okay, I could just sense that he thought, you actually genuinely like this, don't you? It's not just because you're after a Royal Oak and for the obvious reasons. He kind of said, "Come with me, come and sit down." Even though I'd already explained to him I had no interest in buying it, or even the brand AP possibly I thought wasn't for myself. But he said, "No, come and sit down." Then the obligatory, he took the watch out and then the whole "try it on, sir." And it was just like, okay, wow, this is, when you try something on, that connection is made. If you like a watch, that connection is made and you're like, oh no, this is bad. And he said, "Right, we'll take your details." And I was even saying to him, "Look, I'm not that. I love this watch, but the whole thing isn't my thing." And he said, "I'll take your And then in the end, I said, "But what is the likelihood of me getting this?" And he goes, "If you keep coming to visit us, I think you can get this. Not quite soon, but you can get this." And one, that's excellent customer service, and two, it's such a great watch. It was nice to know that you could go somewhere like that where they weren't going to just turn you away and say impossible. Maybe because it was an offshore, I don't know. But he wasn't rushing me out the door like you would get in some places. And it was just a great moment. And also being in Harrods, and that the green Harrods is synonymous with the green. That's their brand color. I know they have the Tudor Harrods, but that's in slightly different price point. But there was something about that whole experience that made me think this is, if one day I could get this, I'm not sure I'd want to wear something that expensive, but in an ideal world, if I could wear it, this would be the ideal diver for me. So, Andy, wild cards. What can you have a wild card diver?
For all the other categories, I think wildcard is relatively easy, but I think we both struggled a little bit thinking of a wildcard diver, like something a bit left field in the world of divers, because typically speaking, most divers are kind of conventional looking, right? They're a tool watch at heart. However, one what jumped out at me was a JLC master compressor in rose gold at 44 millimeter. Of course, rose gold is not the ideal diver, but hey, it's my wild card, so I'm allowed it, right? And what stood out to me was just the contrast of rose gold with the black dial. It was absolutely beautiful. I don't want to say it's cliche, but for me personally, black and gold just works for me every single time, whether it's rose gold, white gold, yellow gold. It just looks superb. And what's really cool about this piece is a conventional diver, or most dive watches, have a screw down crown, which is a great, tried and tested system. However, the issue is sometimes it's not so easy to find the thread. You've got to put the right pressure on the crown and get the bite to screw the crown in. Like, as a normal everyday wearer, that's not an issue. But as a true diver, which I am not, by the way, you maybe want something that works a bit more quicker. And what JLC came to market with was the compression key, which only takes half a turn to actually lock each crown on the watch. So that's a great innovation. And also it has an arrow system, so you can clearly see, with a white arrow, everything's cool. Red arrow, hey, watch out, you're not currently locked. So am I going to go diving with a rose gold watch? Is anybody? I doubt it. But just coming from that family, where a stainless steel version, of course, that is a great system, I believe. So something what stood out to me, the watch itself is just extremely beautiful. I really enjoy, pieces like this. It's certainly a statement. 44 millimeter rose gold watch. That's quite dive watch as well. So it's not thin. It's got some weight to it, but I'd rock it. I think it's really cool. But Palm, I'm interested to see what you've chosen.
Well, I really struggled with this one because I just don't think you can get a left of field driver. So I just went for it. I thought, okay, I'm going for the wackiest, silliest dive watch you can get, which is the Swatch X Blancpain 50 fathoms, 90-foot water resistance. That's it. That's all I'm going to say about it. That's my wild card. It's not something I'm a big fan of, but that's what I would say was a left of field decision. And that leads us into travel watches. So, Andy, which watch have you owned that you want to talk about then?
This is quite easy for me. When we were talking about, the different categories, when it came to travel, we thought a true travel watch really needs to have a GMT function, right? And I personally haven't owned many GMT watches, but I did own one, and it's safe to say it's certainly a wild card what I have owned. And it was the Azimuth Mr. Robot GMT. Gosh, where to start with this watch? It looks like, the old robot toys from Japan. It's very funky looking. The wind of the crown is actually like what you'd see in the back of a wind up vintage toy. It's very, very cool. Definitely a novel touch to it. It's quite a large watch, so in width it's 43 millimeter wide and it was 50 millimeter long, so it definitely takes up your wrist. It's certainly a big piece in all respects. It's quite thick as well, but it's cool. It's an ETA movement, so there's nothing going on in there what's going to blow you away as in terms of finishing. There was a little exhibition back, not much to see in there. It actually said something like life, signs of life, so you see if your robot was still alive, you could see the pulse going, right? The balance wheel running away there. So kind of a clever touch, but still you're looking at an ETA movement at the end of the day. But what this watch did give you was it had two eyes. The left eye was your home time, and the right eye was your GMT time. The nose of the robot which was like triangular, was your running seconds. You've got no clue where your seconds are. It's there running. It's novel. It's a bit of animation on the watch, to be honest. But the really cool thing for me was it was my first retrograde watch as well. So it had retrograde minutes, which I really liked that touch. What I would say about the watch, for the price point, what it comes in at, the quality of the finishing on the case itself is superb. And even down to the buckle, it was almost as good as an AP buckle. Honestly, it was superb finishing. The rubber, what's used for the strap, was really high quality as well. So, okay, a few corners cut on the ETA, but it's heavily modified, right? It's an ETA with retrograde at the end of the day, plus GMT. But the overall finishing of a watch, I did find very, very good. And it was my first GMT, a very unconventional one, but you know what? I did enjoy rocking that piece, and for the right price, I would actually buy it back. But Pam, I'm sure you're going to have a more conventional piece versus me.
Yes, I think so. I remember that robot watch. It was very funky, wasn't it? The big watch, but no, very funky watch. So for me, yes, a lot more conventional. Surprise, surprise. It is a Rolex GMT Master 2 116710 BLNR, the Batman. For me, in Rolex's catalog, I think the most beautiful watches they make are the GMTs, and historically as well. I don't think there's a watch better looking in terms of overall sporty looks yet good looks. I think it combines both of them perfectly. 40 millimeters, 70-hour power reserve. You know, this is a very useful watch. Great for travel. It's got a rock hard 3186 movement in there, and the quick set GMT function is also very easy to use. So if anyone's ever used one of these, I'm sure there are many of you that have. The GMT hand is actually your local time hand, and that's set as you would normally set a watch. And then there's a second click of the crown, and that's where you move the Mercedes hand round, which would run to your local time. And with GMT, obviously, you can do 2 time zones just from the hands, and then there is a bi-directional bezel, and the beveling on that bezel is just beautiful. There's very little clicks, very smooth, very smooth the way it moves around and around either way, and you can actually tell 3 time zones using that. But it is, one, a stunning watch, 2, a very practical watch. Maybe not the safest watch, but then hey, these are the best travel watches we have owned that we're talking about. And for me, that has to be the one. It's one of my favorite watches, if not the most favorite watch that I've owned.
So I do have to say, Pam, when I think of you and watches, I really do see the Batman as your watch, your signature watch, to be honest with you. And it's a beautiful watch. I can't say more about it. It's exactly what you said. I think it's perfect for all occasions. It's sleek, it's smart, it's suave. You can wear it, dressed down. You can wear it to, a rather nice dinner. It's just the perfect watch. I really do agree. That does lead me, however, onto my ideal. So where do we go with, where do you lead on from a Batman, a superb watch? Well, it has to be Patek. It has to be the 5131R, which is just an incredible world timer. It's pretty renowned these days. And shout out to Jamie if you're listening to the show. We gave you a shout out at the start. Shout out because you own this incredible piece. And gosh, what a piece to own, right? It's just a work of art. If you haven't seen these pieces, just the amount of work what goes into the dial. So you've got the world map painted onto the dial, which is, I think, is only like 3 artists in the world who can do this for any of the brands. So that's Vacheron or Patek, etc. To do this level of detailing is just an art, and not many people have this. It's micro level artistry, and it's very, very difficult to achieve. And imagine any little bit of leak of paint, it's game over. And then around all the countries, there's very thin layer of gold going around each one, and it just can't be messed up. To make it even more like painful for the artist, then you have the clear enamel placed over the painting, and then obviously that has to be baked, and you've got to hope that there's no cracks or nothing goes wrong. It is just such a spectacular watch. a watch what I would truly love to own. They're not an easy watch to obtain. However, if you do ever get to that level, what a piece. The ultimate travel watch, in all honesty, in an ideal world, right, of safety. It has the 240 movement inside the HU, and it has that beautiful micro rotor. It ticks every box for me. It's Patek, it's class. It's a work of art from a horological perspective and from physical artistry on the dial as well. So yeah, what a piece. What more can I say about that? So Palm, what's your ideal?
Well, my ideal is the same brand as my owned, but it's in a whole different genre, in a whole different space. It has a GMT function. It is the Rolex Explorer 2, but the Freccioni, the OG, the 1655, also known as the Steve McQueen, who was the king of cool. And I do think this, as cool is an overused term, this is a very cool GMT watch. Okay, originally made for spelunkers who are cave divers, but this version, the original, is just so spectacular. It has those 1970s vibes. Again, it almost space age, even though it's for caves, because of the lack of light down there. It tells you, exactly what time of day you're on the 12 and 24-hour part of the day. But to travel, it's perfect for 2 time zones, and there isn't a better looking vintage vibed watch, grail watch for me than this. I mean, you can talk Pepsis, you can talk anything else, but to me, the Rolex Explorer 2 1655 is the one. And that plexiglass as well gives it that extra vintage. 40 millimeters, not 42 like the modern one, which I used to own, the 216570. It is black dialed original. There's no polar dial. I know everyone loves the polar dial now, but the original had the black dial, and it shows that's the way it should be done. So to me, that is the one. It's not a wild card. That's definitely not a wild card. But do you have a wild card for your travel watch, Andy?
I certainly do. So I've gone to Jacob and Co. I've gone for the Epic SF24. If you're not familiar with this reference, it is insane. So check it out in the pictures once more. It's in rose gold, and the way it does the GMT function is so simple for the user, but so incredibly complicated for the watchmaker to create this piece. So it's a tourbillon to start. So already is a crazy complication in there. It has 528 components overall within this piece. And then part of that, is over 100 different components just for the module, what does the GMT function. So there's a lot going on. And the way the GMT function works, it kind of sits above the normal watch dial. And it's like a flicker, flicker's what you'd see in the old airport displays, So before it went all digital, you'd have these, it was kind of flicker, but digital, right? It flicks over the destination, the time. And Evergreen Cinemas used to use this as well. So this was actually Jacob's inspiration behind this piece. And it's incredibly hard to achieve that function. However, once it's achieved for the user, literally all you do is push one button, flick through all the different destinations and time zones, and you're there. That's it. That's simple. You don't have to do anything. You set your main time, then you just flick through and it will do it for you. Once it's set, when the hour is up, it will flick to the next hour. And it's just super cool. It's quite a large watch at 45 millimeter. It's got a 48 power reserve, which is quite respectable for a tourbillon as well. It's really pushing the limits when you think how much is going on in that piece. So it is a Ronaldo watch. I believe Ronaldo wears this piece. So if I was to be that cool footballer in another life, that's certainly one I would rock. These watches are well over, 200k, I believe. So we're going crazy level, but that is a wild card, and that's what a wild card is for sometimes. Well, Pam, interested to see what you've gone for.
For my wildcard travel watch, it is actually more of a dress watch, but you'd be surprised that it does have a travel watch function. You would not know. This watch is something of beauty. It's a Vacheron Constantin multi dual time tonneau, the 47400. As the name suggests, it's a tonneau shaped case. It's 18 karat white gold, stealth wealth. Okay, let's not say stealth wealth. It's just understated beauty. That's what I would say. It's a 36 millimeter by 47 millimeter case. case. So sweet spot hit again. This is close to perfection for me, this watch. The closest I've seen in any dress watch. I'm not a big dress watch guy, but I appreciate beautiful things, and this is definitely one of those. It's got a JLC based caliber 920 movement as well, so it's got an unbelievably intricate and well made movement. It's stunning. And then when you see the actual dial, it's a silverized guilloche, and the actual detail on it, as you look closer to it, it's almost like snowflakes, but in perfect order. It's like the creator of this dial picked grains of salt at symmetrical points and positions on that dial to make it so perfect and look so beautiful with this sheen of silverized white, like the sun glistening on snow. It is absolutely amazing. And then once you've moved on from how beautiful the case and the dial are, you look at the actual layout on the dial. So to tell the time, it has the usual sword hands as you'd have in a beautiful dress piece. At 10 o'clock, it has a power reserve. At 2 o'clock, it actually has the calendar. And at 6 o'clock, it has the second time in clock form. And just when you think it's done, giving you all the information, you can see a day-night indicator as well, just to the left of the second time zone clock. It's one focal point after another. Most things have a single focal point. This has about 6. And I have to say, this is very underrated as a travel watch. You know, I wouldn't normally call something like this a travel watch, but it is. And I think this is definitely left of field of any travel watch I've seen before. So that's us done with our travel watches. And let's now move into our final category, the pilot watch. Andy, what's the favorite pilot watch you've owned?
Originally, when we set this, I was struggling to think which pilot watch I had actually owned. And I remember we were talking about this a little bit. I was like, I don't know. Can we even do pilot watch? Because I don't know if I've owned one. I'm like, hang on a minute. You had the Rolex Air King. You mentioned it on the previous show, the 116900. And that is a pilot watch. Is it the ideal pilot watch for a true pilot? Any pilots listening to the show, let me know. I'd imagine the dial doesn't quite give you the legibility and simplicity which you would require. However, it's such a cool watch. It was inspired by the Bloodhound, so the land speed record car from the UK, I believe, and the dials within the car were designed by Rolex, and that's where Rolex got the inspiration for the dial for the Rolex Air King 116900 and the new iteration as well. And normally Rolex don't connect themselves with failure. They always want to be seen as successful, right? That is Rolex. Rolex signifies success. It's just 100% what Rolex represents. Anybody who's achieved anything, a landmark period within their life, normally want to celebrate it. If they're buying a material thing, item, watch, it is Rolex what comes to mind. So I'm interested one day, maybe the Bloodhound can break that record. Now, people might say, hang on a minute, but it's not in action anymore. The original team's disappeared. However, it is in the museum, but it is available for purchase, and a new team could get involved, develop it, and maybe break that land speed record. I wonder if that was to happen, what that would do in reflection to the current prices, of the Air King currently on the market, inspired by that. That's not what it's all about, but I'd imagine it'd have a strong impact. And I'm sure the board of directors over at Rolex be very pleased that it had been achieved. So yeah, an interesting watch, 40mm, perfect modern day sporty pilot style Rolex, a bit whack, a bit left field. That's maybe me by now anyway, as listeners are starting to probably see. I like things what are a bit against the norm occasionally. So that's mine out of my own collection. But Parm, I'd be interested to see what your choice is.
I've not owned too many, to be honest with you, but I have owned one, and this is one of the earliest watches I bought. So last show we talked about our journeys. This is something I didn't mention in the last show. So when I started my first job, my first professional job, I went to the jewelers, Ernest Jones in town, and I thought I'm going to buy myself a watch. Like in Rocky 2, when he's just got his money from fighting for the world title, Rocky Balboa goes to the shop and says, if you want a good time, you need a good watch. So that was the mentality I took in with me to the shop. Pretty much the beginning of my watch buying days. And Oris caught my eye. Again, a very reputable brand, very respected, and a watch I'll always have a soft spot for because it was my first, I would say, luxury watch, my first series curious watch. So I ended up buying the Oris Big Crown Pointer Date 7400. And the thing with this is I still have this watch. And it's many, many years old, decades old. And the look of it, it's got such a traditional look. The amazing guilloche dial, beautiful creamy guilloche dial. It's got cathedral hands. It's got an open case back, thin steel with it's got a rose gold looking beveling, and the date pointer is like a red crescent moon which goes round the dial to tell you the date. It's got so much going on that watch. It's got so many good looking aspects to it. I'm just glad I got it. And it's just something that was just okay, bit dress watchy, bit pilot watchy, but it looked good and it still looks good. And it's got some very good points to it as well. So, Andy, tell us about your ideal.
So for my ideal, I went IWC, and I think as soon as I say and echo those words, I think everybody listening knows it's got to be a big pilot, right? So the big pilot in question is the 501015 with a beautiful green dial, 7-day power reserve, so quite impressive. It's quite a big watch, so you'd kind of expect that, right? With so much space within the watch to able to fit in such a movement, what can give you those 7 days of power. It's got some great history. It comes from a bloodline of heritage, originally introduced in 1940, and it has true heritage. It has true World War II history, just brought up to modern times. And what I like about this piece is it's extremely clean, very legible, a true pilot's watch, right? Not busy, not overly complicated, just a really clear display at a large size. And you get the date at 6 o'clock also. So for a daily wearer, as a pilot watch, it's quite functional as well. And you get your power reserve meter over, around the 3 o'clock side of a watch as well. So yeah, a piece what really stands out to me, I've always admired the big pilots, to be honest. It's those onion crowns, the large onion crowns, which I just think are really cool. Originally it was designed, for the pilots when they're wearing the gloves to able to still grip the crown. They're a large piece. It's something you've got to rock with a bit of confidence. But again, with that green dial, it just really, I love the green dial. I love British Racing green dial as well. And yeah, it just ticks all the boxes for me as a true, historical pilot watch. So that's what I've gone for. But Parm, what have you chosen?
For me, I would say Breitling have that heritage, a great heritage in that area. And I was going to say a Breitling Navitimer, rose gold. It's a bit special. It's ideal. It's going to be expensive. But then I did a bit more research and I found this Breitling Navitimer 1959 edition in platinum, which I believe is a recent release. I did not know this existed till recently, and I believe they released it recently. It has a blue dial. Again, it'll have a busy dial, and the Navitimer probably has the busiest dial of any watch, any popular iconic watch you'll see, because there's so much going on. It's navigation and aviation. It has a B09 movement with a 70-hour power reserve. Tough, hard as nails Breitling movement. Very solid, very respected. But then it goes into that luxury with the platinum case. It's got an alligator leather strap. It's got an 18-karat gold buckle. The funny thing about it is to keep the vintage vibes to it, because it's a 1959 re-edition. It's got a plexiglass crystal, which is kind of surprising, considering it's composed of all those high-end expensive materials, but yet it still keeps that original look of the Navitimer, the OG, not the current version, which is busy with you get the reverse panda, but the OG without the white dials. It's in blue, but you get the 3 sub dials. The visibility is not the greatest, but it retains that. And it also keeps the AOPA logo, the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association wings logo, which they are putting onto newer ones now. It's not the traditional Breitling wings that you'd get on an Aston Martin or a Bentley, which was very popular at that time as logos go. But it retains the aesthetic of a vintage aviation watch, yet it throws up luxury all over it, I should say, because of how busy it is. And to be fair, at retail, I mean, I'm not sure how many people would buy this at retail. It's £34,500 for a platinum watch. That's not too bad with all those things going on with it as well. So I think for me, as pilot watches go, that's probably my ideal. So Andy, tell us about your choice of left of field Wildcard watch.
I must have some obsession with onions, so I've gone for another watch with an onion crown. So I've gone for the Zenith Type 20 Pilot, but I've gone for no ordinary Type 20 Zenith. I've gone for, of course, it's wildcard, right? So I've gone for the Tourbillon in rose gold. It's rather crazy. It didn't specify, so I had to hunt for this watch a little bit. There's not a great amount of details on this piece, but the typical Type 20s sit at around 45 millimeters. Some of the extremely large models sit at 48 millimeters. It has a chronograph function, which is great, and it has moon phase as well at 8 o'clock. And if that wasn't enough, you have a tourbillon between 11 and 12. So, quite a distracting watch for a pilot. So, it's not really a true pilot's watch, but my gosh, it is quite impressive, I do have to say. Definitely a statement piece. And again, just touching on the history of Zenith, again, it's going back to World War II. And unlike the big pilot from IWC, worn by the pilots in IWC's case, in Zenith's case, they was actually used as the instrument dials within the plane. So again, then it's been put onto a wristwatch. So it does have that heritage. It does have that history. Also has that connection. And many people were upset with the latest release of the new pilot watches from Zenith as well. So I recently tried one on in Geneva, and extremely simple and not. I don't know what you think, Palm. I'd like to hear your comments on this. I wouldn't say it looks traditionally like a pilot watch. It definitely you're getting a lot of value for money because it has, the El Primero movement powering a time only watch. If you're looking at the time only reference, so you're getting a lot of bang for your buck. And when you look, at the chronograph, and obviously it makes more sense for the El Primero movement to be present there, but they're nothing to do with the original Type 20s circular, historical pieces once more. This is a new modern iteration, and it did upset people. There is a hardcore cult of collectors for the Type 20s. So it's good that they're doing these cool tourbillon pieces, which it is a 2023 model. It's probably a novelty, and it's around 60k euros, so not the most accessible for a lot of people. But in the dream world of having a crazy wildcard pilot watch, that is certainly what I would pick. But Palm, your last and final choice for today's episode, what is it going to be?
So going back to that Zenith pilot watch we saw in Geneva, I quite liked it. I liked the color combination. I liked the look of it. It looked very good. It didn't look like a traditional pilot watch to me, and I do think it was slightly overpriced for what it was. A nice watch though, and obviously an excellent movement, very well made. I think that has to be your type of thing. I can see why people would like that. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I just think not my cup of tea. And for my left of field pilot's watch, again, it's another Breitling. I'm a bit of a Breitling fan. I've owned one in my time. I'd like to own more in the future, but there's something about Breitling and aviation. I think that goes hand in hand. And my wild card Breitling is the Breitling Emergency with the yellow dial, just to give it a bit more wackiness to it with the whole yellow thing. I mean, this is an amazing watch. It's made of titanium, 43 mil. It's got 50 meters water resistance, but that's not what the selling point of this is. The USP for this is the fact that it has an antenna in it. So if pilots or aircrew are in trouble or in an emergency situation, they can broadcast an emergency signal, and it would last for 48 hours and across a 100-mile range. So on an emergency frequency as well. So this is something you can just buy in the shops as well. This isn't just specifically made for them. So it's quite crazy, right? That you can have this kind of watch as your wristwatch. I think it's just it blows my mind.
I think that's definitely a great choice and kind of a James Bond watch, right? Having, like, if there's ever to be a gadgety watch, the way the antenna just pulls out of those watches is,
Yeah, it pulls
you
out, and
know,
it's got a micro transmitter in it. So that's something
yeah,
that
it's,
Q branch should be telling James Bond. Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
pay
It's
attention, Bond.
what a selection, right? Today, it's been a bit of a marathon.
It's been a watchathon.
Yeah.
Well, listenathon on watches. That's been a great chat.
Absolutely. A pleasure as always. And of course, we're always going to upload the pictures of these pieces. So make sure to tune in to our IG. And make sure not only to check out our IG, please give us a quick follow as well so you can keep up to date with all the posts we're putting relevant to these podcasts. So it's chrono_passion_7. We will always, when we drop the podcast very shortly after, sometimes, IG gives us some technical issues like it did the previous week. Apologies for that, but we will get the images on there as soon as possible so you can listen along to the podcast and also check out the pieces, what we're talking about as well. So make sure to look out for that. As always, it's been an absolute pleasure from me. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. And until next time, that's goodbye from me.
And thank you so much for listening. And that is us done for the day and done for another show. And we will see you and you will hear us in the next one.